صدق الله العظيم.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for that. Next person that we would like to bring on, and right straight from Ramallah, is Wajdi Hussein to give us one song, please, Wajdi. Tfaddal. For Eid with Palestine.
Thank you, Manal. موطني الجلال والجمال والثناء والبهاء في رباك والحياة والنجاة والهناء والرجاء في هواك هل أراك سالما منعما وغانما مكرما سالما منعما وغانما مكرما هل أراك في علاك تبلغ السماك موطني الشباب لن يكل همه أن يستقل أو يبي نستقي من الردى ولن نكون للعدا كالعبيد لا نريد ذلنا المؤبدا وعيشانا المنكدا لا نريد بل نعيد مجدنا التالي موطني my homeland, glory and beauty, sublimity and splendor are in your health, life and deliverance, pleasure and hope are in your air, my homeland. Dear attendees from every city and every country, dear attendees from all over, thanks for your listening and your kind attention. I am Wajdi Hussein from Ramallah, Pakistan. Let me just say something. Actually, we all know that the media didn't give you the right story. The Palestinian people, as you have been subjected to a lot of injustice over many years. But this time we are facing displacement from our homes by forced oppression and racism. We are forbidden from praying in mosque and church in Jerusalem. And in this moment, and the 7 days before, facing a bloody and ugly war against our people in Gaza, killing children, women, and old people, even animals, innocent people, by the Israeli occupation army. There is no mercy. There is no justice. We call in all the world now and every time to stand by our side, because we are the owners of the land, because we deserve the life and dignity, because we born in Palestine and we will die in Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Wajdi. Thank you for the nice patriotic song. And now we will continue. So welcome everyone. For the people that are just joining us, we have a wonderful program to celebrate Eid, and we still will celebrate Eid regardless of what's happening. And this is organized in lieu of what the Biden administration is doing. We don't need to have their Eid. We can have our own Eid for Palestine. So I'd like to begin by inviting Dr. Osama Abushade from AMP to please let's kick it off and frame it for us, please. Dr. Osama.
Thank you, Dr. Fakhouri. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Peace be upon you. Eid Mubarak. A Eid of steadfastness and defiance. A Eid of true humanity, not a selective one. At this moment, the White House is holding a parallel celebration for the Muslim Eid al-Fitr. But it is a celebration based on selective humanity, a celebration at the expense of the Palestinian people and at the expense of their blood. While we are talking now, let us keep in mind that our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, are being bombed. Dozens have been killed so far. Hundreds have been injured, the majority of which are civilian, women and children. Houses, towers are being leveled to the ground while people are inside and people are asleep. While we're talking now and while we're celebrating this Eid, and while the White House is celebrating this Eid, let us keep in mind that Palestinians, defenseless Palestinians in Jerusalem and in the West Bank and inside the state of Israel itself, Palestinians who hold the Israeli citizenship are being brutalized and terrorized by an apartheid state. So this is the situation on the ground in Palestine. The US just again foiled a new attempt by the UN Security Council to condemn the state of Israel for the war crimes that it is committing. The US and the Biden administration continues to provide political cover to this colonial enterprise, to this apartheid regime, while it's inflicting devastation on the Palestinian people. So there is nothing to celebrate with the White House. This is not a celebration of Eid. This is at the expense of the Palestinian people. This is a president who have promised us that he will lead by the power of our example. Someone who promised us that he will restore America's moral authority on the global stage. I'm not sure what moral authority he was referring to. And I'm not sure what power of example he talks about. What we see is immorality in motion. What we see is another complacency by the United States and by the Biden administration. So it doesn't make sense that we have a president who promised us that he will center human rights, a president that promised us that he will be for civil rights and that he will be for human rights and that he will condemn any bigoted ideology, mainly white supremacy, while he supports Zionism supremacy or Jewish Zionist supremacy over the indigenous people of the land of Palestine. It's just a plain hypocrisy. That's what we're seeing now. This is exactly now what we're dealing with. We're dealing with an administration that is taking us as Muslim Americans for granted, that we will continue to vote for this president or continue to his party, continue to vote to his party just because they're the anti-Trump or the anti-Republican candidates. No more. Also, we're dealing with Muslims who accepted this invitation, who are selling our community cheap, who are selling our brothers and sisters in Palestine cheap. Imagine that these members of our community, these activists, so-called leaders, would accept an invitation by, or had accepted an invitation by the Trump administration while he was advocating for white supremacy and the suppression of African Americans, our brothers and sisters, African American brothers and sisters in America. Imagine that they have accepted such an invitation. So there is a moral equivalency between supporting white supremacy and supporting what is happening in terms of the devastation that is being inflicted, the war crimes that are being inflicted by the apartheid state of Israel on the Palestinian people. I will conclude by reminding ourselves of what happened in 2014, when Joe Biden was the VP and the vice president of Barack Obama. If you remember, Israel waged an assault on Gaza in July 2017 during the holy month of Ramadan. Barack Obama invited Muslims for a Ramadan iftar dinner. And in that dinner, Obama made sure to humiliate the Muslims who attended that iftar by endorsing the Israeli onslaught on Gaza at the time, and by defending our own government spying on Muslim Americans. And then a few days later, Barack Obama issued a statement congratulating Muslims on Eid, while Gaza was also under assault, while war crimes were committed, while the US was supporting the state of Israel and resupplying it with ammunition. He wished us a happy Eid, with the exception of the ones in Gaza who were too busy getting bombed at the time by our own tax money, by our own weapons that we manufacture in this country. So this should be a clear message to those Muslims amongst us, Muslim Americans, who claim to be leaders in the Muslim community. It's either you stand on principle, either you stand with the oppressed, either you stand against the oppressor and show us that moral courage, or you have no place in our community. And you will be treated as someone who betrayed the trust of our community and betrayed our religion and betrayed our humanity. Anyone who accepts to be co-opted at the expense of the oppressed have no place within us and amongst us. So we are holding this celebration to celebrate the steadfastness of our brothers and sisters in Palestine, and to tell them that we stand with you and that we're not going to sell you cheap, and that we will continue to work on your behalf until your voices are heard here, until we change our misguided policy, a policy that is enabling an apartheid regime, and until freedom and justice are restored in Palestine. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Osama Abu Sheikh, for those comments and for your passion and for the steadfastness that we're talking about. And we're going to change our agenda just a little bit because I know there's a few of our panelists have time constraints. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. And it's someone that many of us have gotten to know and are getting to know really well. And this is Delegate Sam Rasul. He became Virginia's first ever Muslim legislator when he was elected to the General Assembly in 2014. He is the child of immigrants from war-torn Palestine and grew up in his parents' corner store, where he would stand on a milk crate at the age of 5. I have seen other kids do that, Sam. And after working 2 jobs in high school and college to make his way, he began a career in nonprofit healthcare management and a small business owner. And today he lives in Roanoke with his beautiful wife, Liali, and their 3 children, Jenna, Amira, and Isa. He is running to become the first lieutenant governor in American history. And Sam, if you could just speak to us for a couple of minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Manal. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Eid Mubarak. Kul sana wa antum salmin wa tayyibin, inshallah. It is a pleasure to be with you all as we own our Eid celebration this evening with this wonderful crowd. Inshallah, this Ramadan and Eid brought you closer to what matters most to you. For me, it's certainly my children. Alhamdulillah, my son Isa was able to fast at the age of 7 the entire month of Ramadan, alhamdulillah, and in that it gave me strength to be able to see such a young man being strong. You know, Eid, it really is a joyous time for us in many different ways, but growing up culturally, it was always a joyous time for the children. And we would give all of these hadiyas, these wonderful gifts to one another and really look forward to what the Eid celebration is really about. it is difficult for us to be able to celebrate it during this difficult time when we see the unjust evictions that are happening in Sheikh Jarrah, when we see the pain and suffering of so many around the world. And right now, we join together to take ownership of our Eid, to take ownership of our celebration, to ensure that we rise up the type of justice that we all look forward to. And so today we pray for justice and peace for all of our children. And I join you in solidarity as we pray for that peace and justice, and wishing you the best during this Eid. And inshallah, you have a wonderful event tonight. وكل سنة وأنتم سالمين وأنتم طيبين إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam. Next, we're going to move right to Dr. James Zogby, another icon in our community, spent many years, decades doing his work. He is the founder of the Arab American Institute, started in 1988. He's an author, he's an amazing speaker, and just lots of wisdom. So we're so happy to have you part of the program this evening, Dr. Zogby, and if you can please share with us for a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Manal, and thank you to everyone to be on this call. Eid Mubarak. And before I begin, I just want to say I love Sam Rasul. Proud of him and proud of everything he's done and everything he's still going to do. And proud of many of you for supporting Sam. Let me say, look, the Eid is a time of joy. And clearly it also today is a time of sorrow and mourning. And frankly, that is a bit of an allegory about life. I mean, life includes its celebrations and its sorrows, and we work our way through them. Sometimes it's hard to see beyond the clouds and to see when the ray of light's going to come through. It's hard to fight your way through the sadness, sometimes to find the joy. But I want to say that, as Manal noted, I've been doing this for many years, and I've been through everything from the mass expulsions of the 70s when I was doing the Palestine Human Rights Campaign, and the campaign of torture, physical torture of prisoners, and the 19,000 homes in Gaza destroyed, et cetera, all the way up to the present time. We have been through this hell many times before. And through it all, there is a steadfastness on the part of the Palestinian people. What there has not been is the same degree of steadfastness on our part here at home in America. We have had a challenge before us, and that is the challenge of how to work within this system to make a difference, to be on the side of those who demand justice. Look, you can get angry, I get angry, but being angry doesn't win. You can pound your fist. I remember the first time I went to see a congressman, I pounded my fist on his desk, and he practically threw me out of his office. He said, I got things to do here, and talk to me right or don't talk at all. I said, but this is important. He said, yeah, everything I do is important. I had to learn to be the kind of person who could build relationships. And that's what we need to do as a community. I mean, we now have a network of people raising money. That's important. We have a great cast of Arab American characters running for office. That's really important. And we have those of us working in campaigns, and that's important. We have to be a part of this process if we're going to make a difference for the Palestinian people, for the people of Lebanon, for the people of Iraq, and for Yemen, and for Syria, and for all the places suffering across that Arab world of ours. But we can't do it if we just wallow in our grief and don't roll up our sleeves and do the work. Look, I learned a lesson from my dad in the grocery store. My father, like many Lebanese immigrants, ran a grocery store. And I remember a big supermarket opened 3 blocks away. And there was worry. My mother was like, is it going to put you out of business, Joe? And he said, no. He said, people will keep coming because they like me and they like to do business at my store. And you know what? They did. He died when I was young. But that store lasted 3 years before he died, and then many years later. People kept going to Zogby Brothers because they liked my father and his brothers. And that's what we have to do, is be the Arab Americans that people like, that congressmen want to talk to, that they call first to say, what am I doing? When Harry Truman recognized Israel, what he said was, his advisors came and said to him, but Roosevelt said he wouldn't do it. And Truman said, he's not president, I am. And I have Jewish constituents who have worked with me for years and they want me to do this. I have no Arab constituents. He did, but they didn't know him and they had never worked with him and they have never done anything for him. So he didn't even know he had them. It was one of the biggest Lebanese, Syrian, Arab populations in the country was St. Louis. The mafia in St. Louis was Arab. It was one of the few places in the country where the mafia was Arab. They did not get involved in politics. We still don't do it in the same way. So look, I mean, I see Sam here, I see Tahani, I see others who've run for office and are running. That's where we have to be, in the marketplace of ideas, in the marketplace of contesting for power. And we have to be friends of those who are in office by building relationship with them. I'm so proud we're doing it now. Leadership of folks like Manal, we're beginning to get into the game in a serious way. We have to keep it up so that 2021 is the last time that there's a massacre that people do not respond to. Jews said 2 generations ago, never again. We never said it. We never did anything about it. Let this be the last Eid that we suffer in silence or in anger or in pain because people are dying. Let this be the one that makes us resolve. We will make a difference. We will make change. We will build relationships, not based on anger, but on trust and friendship with those in power, so that this is the last time we ever have to see this happen. So I thank you very much. Thank you, Manal, and thank you, Sam and Tahani, and everybody for what you're doing.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Zogby, very inspirational. And thank you, Sam. I don't know that I think too appropriately, and Dr. Osama. So the next thing is we do have a few poll questions. We're going to bring up our very first poll question. It'll take just a few seconds for you to answer it. So if we can have Kareem, I think, is bringing them up for us this evening. So poll question number 1, if you could please respond. Kareem.
I believe they're coming from Noreen or Hatton. Let me make sure.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, so do you support ending U.S. aid to Israel? You have 3 options, yes, no, or no opinion. And then your demographic data, please. So no one will see your answers, it's private. If you could please take a moment.
Can you unmute us to vote?
Well, you just click on it, because then we tabulate all the results.
We're trying.
You're trying, it's not working?
Panelists can't vote.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that we've given you sufficient time. One more time, do you support ending U.S. aid to Israel? Your options are yes, no, no opinion. And then we're asking you for your demographic data, if you're American Muslim or an ally of the American Muslim community. So we'll go ahead and close that up. And we have so many other speakers, and we want to keep our program moving. So our next speaker is Anas Al-Farra. He is a U.S. resident in Seattle, currently in Gaza under bombardment. And Anas came back just a week ago to spend his first Ramadan, back meaning into Gaza. And this is, what he wrote, to spend his first Ramadan with his family after 12 years of being away. And then things exploded there. Anas did leave at the age of 17 on a full scholarship to the US. He received his BA and a master's in electrical engineering. He currently works in intellectual property in high tech. He's an inventor with more than 70 patents and a consultant to multiple companies across the world. So I give you Anas Al-Farra. And Anas, if you could, if I'm saying your name, inshallah, I'm saying it correctly. And if you can give us a few minutes of just your experience of what's happening.
Sure. Thanks for the invitation, and Eid Mubarak to all of you guys. In terms of my experience in Gaza so far, people are proud, and we are happy that things are finally changing. We've been living in some form of steadiness and not a very prideful situation for the past few years. And right now the resistance is taking the matter in its own hands in one way, and in the other way, people are starting to acknowledge that, hey, in the US, we're struggling for money, for critical issues, and we would rather this tax money that everyone here on this call is paying to be going to the causes that we care for, inside the US versus unconditionally supporting Israel. Things unfortunately are tense inside Gaza. My wife's sister lost her home yesterday in Burj al-Jala''s tower. My wife's brother lost his home 3 days ago at Burj Hanadi. I went to say my greetings and my condolences to some family during Eid, and this is the nature of Gaza. We don't know when we're gonna see each other again, if there is a chance that we can live and have airstrikes is happening in the background actually right now. But if in Khan Yunis, and if there is a chance that we can celebrate and wish someone a happy Eid, we would, and you can be going in the next door and giving your condolences. I saw kids going through some severe trauma, some speech pattern issues that they're having. I mourned adults that are currently living that are no longer the people I knew. And quite frankly, with some of them, it would be better for them and for others if they're no longer here, given their psychological situation. And sadly to say that, but this is how severely situations got in Gaza. I want to get few points clear here that this is not a two-sided war, right? This is about one of the most advanced militaries in the world, attacking a largely defenseless population of the indigenous people here in Gaza and in Palestine. We are basically being bullied and empowered by the US tax money to do that unconditionally, and have been for many, many, many years. And if we stand up to the bully, we're terrorists, and if we have to educate the world that what is bullying and that bullying is bad while being bullied, it's quite devastating, that you have to keep doing this educational situation. I do not want to be using more literal analogies, hoping that because I do not want to trigger maybe some people in the audience, but imagine if some horrific act is happening to you, and you're having to tell people, hey, I am being, this horrific act is happening to me, and this is why this horrific act is bad. And, excuse me while I fight, this person that is causing this horrific act to me, I also want to mention that when Israel bombs are not dropping, life here is actually quite unbearable. We don't have electricity right now. I am plugging in like a battery and a UPS to get internet connection in the background. I almost died a few days ago chasing good internet connection, driving from Gaza to Khan Yunis with no ceasefire allowed. Life here is very expensive, actually, for people. So I'm not sure how people make ends meet. Also we've been living under blockade here in Gaza for the past 15 years. So this is totally chipping on people's mental health. And I got stuck at my sister's apartment in Tel El Hawa next to Barcelona's court a few days ago in Gaza. And over the 30 hours I got stuck there, we evacuated the apartment twice barefoot. And for those 30 hours, within almost every 15 minutes, we had about 5 airstrikes, happening over 30 hours. So you can tell that this is a massive sleep deprivation and torture to everyone around you, trying to get you to beg for ceasefire, and make things work and make you okay with it. We are peaceful people. Arguably, we've been too peaceful, for the many, many years before. Otherwise, we wouldn't have ended with 90% less of our own land, So things have to change. And if anything, just if this is happening because of recklessness, mostly from American citizens not taking charge of their own tax money. If you go talk to your local congressperson and tell them, please, either make me pay less taxes or use this tax dollar to use my, to support my needs. Someone will go and lobby and use this tax money to kill probably your people, and harm your communities. And this harm is irreparable in a lot of cases. I don't know, what else you want to know about, if you want to have, I don't know how long you guys want to see this happen for, but this is totally within our control. We do not need band-aids. A lot of people have been talking to me and saying, hey, how can we help? How can I send $100, $200, this or this or that? I'm like, no, I don't need that. I need you to get the bully off my back, and stop enabling that bully with your own tax money. And it is currently happening on your own watch with your own tax dollars, whether you like it or you don't. So, if you want to take 10 minutes or 5 minutes or a few seconds to go reach out to your senator or congressperson and tell them, hey, just change the tax allocation or do something about it, we will continue to live a miserable life. Palestinians in the US can go march, in places for hours, but not reach to their own congressperson. I've been into those protests. I lived in Seattle for 7 years. I lived in Jackson, Mississippi, went to a Black school there. People, will talk all the talk, but, they would like take a couple pictures and post it on Instagram. Oh my God, I look so pretty, free Palestine, this and this and that. But what is happening on your own watch? You're not going to take it into your own hands. So we need people to, if you really mean it, so go actually take charge of your own tax money. Otherwise, just don't tell me, be safe, or I'm praying for you, or a lot of this nonsensical stuff, because I appreciate it. But, if you come from here, if you have heritage that connects to here, you should probably do more than that. And again, it's not about band-aids. It's actually handicapped the Palestinian people from taking charge of their own situation, from rebuilding their own places, and they actually became dependent on it. So again, we can't deal with the band-aid. I don't want it. I would rather die and my people die than that. So this is the end of my message. Take charge of your tax dollars. Things will change accordingly. And let's not continue giving Palestinians band-aids, because it is literally incapacitating us more than the occupation itself.
Great. Thank you so much, Enes, and hopefully people heard some really specific things, which really translates into take action, become engaged, get involved. Every little bit helps. So earlier I had actually pulled this DVD. I don't know if you guys can see it, Roadmap to Apartheid. And I remember when this was released, they told us when they worked on this project that when we talk about South Africa, no one, can you hear me? Yeah. So no one knew that would happen, that, the morning when they woke up and apartheid had been declared, that, so all our work is important. So thank you so much, Enes, for that. We're going to continue to move the program. We have a great lineup of speakers. Our next, and then we're going to do more poll questions as well. So if we can please now, I'm going to bring up Melek Matar, age 21, and she's an artist that started originality from the Gaza Strip, and she paints powerfully, expressionist faces, figures, and semi-abstract designs. She first started painting at the age of 13, and I know she has a long introduction, but Melek, I want to spend more time on letting you speak, and then we'll share it. I'll put it, even some of it in the chat box. So thank you, Melek, if you could please share. And she's also in Gaza, correct, Melek?
Yeah,
okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much, everyone, for inviting me. I will try my best to speak like properly. I haven't been able to sleep for the past 6 days, and it's been really difficult putting the situation into words because it's beyond what I can really explain. I came here for a vacation. I live in Turkey for the past 4 years. Of course, getting the scholarship was a struggle. Being able to go out of the Gaza Strip was also a struggle because of the siege. So finally, when the border opened, I took it as a chance to come back to my family after years of being separated, to spend Ramadan and to spend the holiday. So at the end of Ramadan, we heard the attack of 9 children of al-Masri family. And we knew by this it's going to be a brutal war. But unfortunately, as a survivor of 3 wars, what I'm witnessing in these days is way much worse. And it comes for many reasons. One, for someone who've heard so many bombings, I'm able to tell that these bombings that are being used by Israel is way more destructive, is way heavier than before. And for someone who's living in the city, so all the towers, all residential buildings are a few minutes apart from me, and I live beside the sea, which makes it even worse because of the gun boats that fire bombings into buildings. So it feels really, it feels that the end is coming. I do feel that when I wake up after like very interrupted sleep, I just feel it's a miracle. And this is how intense the situation is. Even like the destruction of these bombings are not only on the buildings that they are targeted, but it goes beyond this. So even when the bombings happened in North and East Gaza, I was able to feel the explosions and the shaking of the house that it takes every bombing that happens in the Gaza Strip, I'm able to feel it in my home. So my family and I, we are staying in one living room, and I actually am here in this room separately because of the interview. But we, as many families, we stay together in one place. So when we are targeted or when we are bombed, we are together in this. It's either we die or it's either we live. So it's a tragic situation, and it's beyond tragic, like seeing the scenes of, I'm sorry. Can you please give me a minute?
And I just want to say, Enes did finish speaking. And if I, sometimes, you know, when you're running, moderating, you get so, you know, in your mind about keeping everything on track. But Enes, you know, thank you for sharing from your heart, because you're physically there and all of the damage that you've seen. And if I didn't come across, you know, compassionate to that, I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands sometimes it's more the role of being a moderator, and probably a better moderator would have picked up on that. So thank you. Melek, are you back?
Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting it, but I was saying that seeing young children having to go through this makes me remember my sister. She's only 10 and she's terrified all the time. And seeing this reminds me pretty much of myself. I was 8 years old when I had the first war that had led to a lot of destructions in my personality that I've been working on very much in the past few years. So going through this feels like going from the zero to rebuild myself and to start having a little bit of faith in this ugly world. I'm sorry for saying ugly, but it is a very ugly place. So I don't really know. I don't really have a message to you all, but I will show you some of my artwork, as Zaina told me, like maybe you would like to see. So for you guys, I'm an artist myself, and I started drawing in the 2014 war. It was my way of sketching and trying to get all my emotions out in papers, because speaking and explaining your emotions can be really difficult at the time of wars. So I started drawing, and since then my art career started. But my art career is ending soon because the only art store in Gaza has been bombed. The art workshops that I've been to have unfortunately been destroyed. So I, and along many artists, will have a very hard time documenting this very important and historical massacre of the Palestinians in Gaza. So I really hope that with time, we will be able to document our stories in different ways, whether it's writing, whether it's painting, and whether it's poems or storytelling, because what's going on right now needs to be seen by as many people as possible. So these all were the beginnings of my artwork. So that's it, guys. I'm actually done with my presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful artwork, Malak, mashallah, your talent. I'd love to interview you sometime and learn more about how you come up with your ideas. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for being patient. Inshallah, life will get better and not be so ugly, but I understand your perspective. It's hard. We do have more poll questions, so this is a good time to introduce our poll question number 2. There are 516 of us that are here. We would love for you to all answer the poll questions. It is private. So if we can please bring up poll question number 2, and then we'll move on to our next speaker. So thank you, everyone.
First, let's share the results first of the first question.
Okay. All right. So, do you support ending U.S. aid to Israel? 93% yes. We had 5% that said no, and then 2% that said no opinion. In terms of demographics, we have 83% that are American Muslim, and then as allies, we're 18%. So do you support ending U.S. aid to Israel? 93% is good. I thought it might have been 100%, but that's okay. All right, so we will close that one out. And if we can please bring up question number 2.
Let's download this one first.
Okay, question number 2, please. Do you support the immediate end to the siege on Gaza? It's a yes, no, no opinion. Do you support the immediate end to the siege on Gaza? And once again, we do ask for the demographic data if you're an American Muslim or if you're an ally of the American Muslim community. So we'll just give you guys a few more seconds to do that, and then we'll go to our next speaker. Thank you all for being here with us this evening for the Eid celebration. Okay. And even if we close the poll, it'll still be available for you at the bottom. So if anyone has missed it and wants to answer it in the next minute or 2, it'll still be there. And I'm pleased to bring our next speaker, and that is Shahd Kudara. She is a legal researcher and advocacy officer at Abdul Haq, a Palestinian human rights organization that was established in 1979 with the aim to protect and promote human rights and the role of law in the occupied Palestinian territory. So please welcome Shahd.
Thank you, Manal, and many thanks for everyone joining. I honestly don't know how I can proceed after the following few interventions, but I hope that justice will be served to the Palestinian people. Now, yesterday, as we commemorated the Nakba Day, we continued to raise our voice against Israel's settler colonial and apartheid regime imposed over the Palestinian people as a whole on both sides of the Green Line and refugees and exiles abroad. For almost a week, the Gaza Strip has been indiscriminately attacked in an Israeli military offensive. Such conduct of disproportionate and excessive use of force against Palestinians breaches basic principles of international law, amounting to great breaches of the Geneva Conventions. Now, not only do Palestinians in the occupied Gaza Strip endure these Israeli shellings, but they've also been living under comprehensive land, air, and sea closure imposed by Israel since June 2007. And of course, the closure constitutes collective punishment over 2 million Palestinians. Since 2012, the UN has repeatedly warned that Gaza would become unlivable by 2020 should Israel fail to lift the closure. And as it is 2021, Gaza is very much unlivable even before 2020 has passed. Across Palestine, we see that the occupying forces continue with their systematic and excessive use of force, including during peaceful demonstrations in Sheikh Jarrah and against worshippers in Al-Aqsa Mosque, amongst others. Just in the past 2 days, 13 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli occupying forces during protests across the occupied West Bank. We also see Palestinians inside the Green Line being violently repressed and arrested by Israeli police during demonstrations in various Palestinian cities, and were also targeted of racist incitement of violence and hate crimes. This oppression and repression, which started with the Nakba of 1948, is only reminding us and the world that the wounds of the Nakba are still to be healed, and that the Nakba did not really end in 1948, but rather began. Israel has used its arms industry to systematically control the Palestinian people and to systematically repress every Palestinian challenging its military occupation and apartheid regime. Israel uses unnecessary, disproportionate, and excessive force while suppressing peaceful protests, as we saw during the Great Return March, for example, in the Gaza Strip. It uses excessive force during search and arrest operations and at checkpoints, in complete disregard for Palestinian life. The international community, including the United States, which provides $3.8 billion in military aid to Israel annually, must implement an arms embargo on Israel. Instead, and despite everything happening on the ground, we see what can only be described as a weak, biased, and unlawful response from the international community. The international community has failed to remind Israel, the occupying power, of its legal obligations towards Palestinians. The international community continues to fail to contextualize and address the root causes of Israel's oppression against Palestinians, which is Israel's settler colonial and apartheid regime. And the international community continues to assign Palestinians, a colonized people and protected population, the same weight of responsibility as Israel, the colonizer and the occupying power. I think it's very safe to say that words of condemnation of Israel's unlawful policies and practices has long passed. And I'll quickly conclude by just stressing that Israel's long-established unlawful policies will not come to an end as long as the international community does not have the political will to take concrete actions, including by sanctioning Israel and imposing an arms embargo, in order to hold Israel accountable for its breaches of international humanitarian law and human rights law. And of course, the ICC in this regard is very crucial, and third states have to adhere to their legal obligations and to fully cooperate with the Office of the Prosecutor to finally achieve justice for the Palestinian people and to end the oppression of Palestinians imposed by Israel.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that strong closing and reminder to all of us. And we appreciate you speaking to us tonight, especially I know it's late there for you. And we wish it was a special Eid for all of us, but inshallah, there is a silver lining, and that's our goal from all of this gathering. So our next speaker, and then we'll have a poll question, and I want to welcome Dr. Omar Suleiman, who has joined us. And we have still 504 people that are just still joining us. So our next speaker, and if we can try to get back on from a time, segment or time, catch up a little bit with our timeline. Our next speaker is Raja Abdul Haq, and he is the executive director of the Majlis Ash-Shura, New York. He is a Palestinian activist and organizer who lives in New York City and earned his master's degree in political science and international relations from CUNY, Brooklyn. And if you could please go ahead and share from your heart what you have for us this evening.
Thank you, Doctor. Thanks for all the attendees and for the speakers, and most importantly for the organizers who put this together. I had the honor of being working with the organizers who've been pushing for a new narrative now. And since the fact that this is mostly centered on a question of American engagement within the political framework that we have around us, I just want to focus on that a little bit and draw an analogy. And I know some people might be a little bit, upset over this analogy, but I think this is the time to make that analogy given the situation of what's happening in Gaza and given the situation of what as Dr. Osama mentioned earlier on, what our people in Palestine, specifically in Gaza, are showing us and showing the world. Since September 11, American Muslims have taken a step back regarding political mobilization. The majority of our political mobilization have been centered around the concept of proving our loyalty to the state, proving our loyalty to American imperialism through the different actions that we work on, through the actions of attending PR events in the White House, through our political actions of working with Zionists, our actions of working with Hindutva, extremists who live around us in this country. We've been, unfortunately, as a community, have taken a step back regarding being powerful when it comes to reasserting our narrative, when it comes to us proving and asking the demands that we have that improve the livelihoods of our people here and overseas, most importantly in political terms and not only in charitable terms. However, on the other side of the world, in Gaza, since 2007, Gaza has been living under a deadly siege where Israeli occupation calculates the calorie intake of every single Palestinian that lives in Gaza. But look where we are today, brothers and sisters, and the people who are watching this show. The people of Gaza today still proving to the whole world that they did not give up, they did not compromise. It would only take them one phone call, I'm exaggerating, with a phone call to Israeli occupation until the Israeli occupation, look, we give up. We want quote unquote peace. Let's quote unquote coexist with the Israeli occupation. We accept the Israeli occupation. As a matter of fact, they don't even need to say that. All they need to do is give up the resistance, give up their right to resist, give up their political aspiration of liberating their land and bringing justice to their people. And Israel will bring them everything they need when it comes to empowerment, when it comes to political and social empowerment to their people. But these people for the past 14 years have been digging tunnels with their nails to bring in food to their families, to protect their people, and to fight against oppression and fight against the Israeli occupation. So I think today we need to create a new era for political empowerment for the Muslim community. Today, I call on the Muslim community to demand two things and to work on two things, to take advantage of this pivotal moment for our community where we have not seen such solidarity, such support for the Palestinian cause, not only because it's a Palestinian cause, but because it is a Muslim cause. The land of Palestine, the colonial project in Palestine is an attack on the Muslim identity, is an attack on Islam, and is an attack on every single human being in this world. So today I demand our community to focus on two things, to declare, launch a new era of political empowerment for our community. Number one, and this is no negotiation here, no more normalization with any kind of relationship with Zionist organizations. Interfaith, local work, political engagement, nothing justifies, no excuses anymore. Today is the day we saw no more normalizers in our circles, no more normalizers in our leadership circles, no more normalization in any place in our community. And number two, we need to demand our Muslim leadership, our Muslim organizations, our Muslim community to engage in political work and with elected officials on principles and principle matters. No more negotiation, no more engagement for the sake of PR and public relations and photo ops. No more engagement for words that mean nothing. When elected officials come to our Eid celebration, telling us Eid Mubarak, but the day before they sent a tweet and blindly supporting the Israeli terrorism in Gaza and blindly supporting the occupation of Al-Aqsa and the forced explosion of our people in Sheikh Jarrah. This should not happen anymore. Yes, people live in this country, but you have every single right, just like the people in Gaza are still fighting and they're still resisting, even though their life is dependent on it. Our life is not dependent on our political engagement in PR campaigns. Today is the day we declare a new era of political engagement that is only based on demands and needs for our community. We sit with Biden and everybody else, specifically in a federal level, to demand the ending of American imperialism, to demand that America stop supporting settler colonial project of Israel, stop colonization of Iraq and Afghanistan and killing of Muslims and non-Muslims around the world. Today is the day we say no more of sitting down in PR, and today we demand to America to end its imperialism around the world. And this is the time. We have not seen our people standing together like today. I've been working for and mobilizing and organizing for Palestine for the past 16 years. In New York and around the country. I've never seen such support. I've never seen such excitement from people, because the people of Palestine are showing us the true, how much they're willing to risk it all for the sake of justice and for the sake of freedom. And we need to take that as a model for us here in America. And I pray for our people in Palestine, and I pray for the resistance, and I pray that we are all united for all of our causes, not just in Palestine, but to stand up for all the oppressed people around the world.
Thank you so much, Raja. And you all have to be patient with me because we are behind, and I want to make sure we hear everyone's voices. So please remember that when it's your turn and we call on you. And what we'd like to do is bring up poll question number 3. And as I bring up poll question number 3, first we'll share the results from the second question. And if you're looking in the chat box, Dr. Bizian is letting us know if what % of our people are voting. So we would really love your participation. So the results for the question was, do you support the immediate end to the siege on Gaza? And the answer was 99% yes. So great. And then as far as 84% is the Muslim group, and then 17% are our allies. So thank you for that. If we can please bring up the next question. And then I'll also begin introducing our next speaker from Gaza. So as soon as that question comes up, and Zainab, you're going to be next. Okay, so this is our third question. And that question is, do you support freedom of movement for Palestinians in Gaza, which includes airport, a seaport, and total opening of the borders? And I'll repeat it. Do you support freedom of movement for Palestinians in Gaza, which includes airport, a seaport, and total opening of the borders? And you'll have a moment to get that.
I can say just one word. This is very important, the polling. This is the sense of the Muslim community in America. So next time a politician tells you that I talked to somebody in front of 7-Eleven about what Muslims want, you could tell them, here's the poll that has a solid representation of the Muslim community. So you'd actually have a poll and evidence that is empirical. So you don't have to speak again from, I went to breakfast and we ate falafel and hummus with someone, and that's the perspective. So
excellent. Yeah, so more scientific. So thank you everyone for participating. Our next speaker is going to be Zainab Bashir from Gaza, and she is a 19-year-old second-year translation student and volunteer writer for We Are Not Numbers. So Zainab.
Sorry, Zainab actually lost connection.
Oh, okay. All right, then let's go ahead. Our next speaker in the lineup was our attorney, Lamis Deek. So Lamis, if you are ready, I'm going to do a quick short intro. So if you give me one moment. And for Lamis, she's an attorney. She's a human rights advocate whose work involves matters ranging from freedom of speech, assembly, and worship to defend against state repression and predatory policing, surveillance, and prosecutors, and has worked to decode and dismantle the unlawful secret demographics units and crafts intervention to protect international political prisoners. Lamis is also an advisor to various charities, students, and academics in the US and the UK, and devises strategies to preemptively defeat transatlantic repression and militarization campaigns. There's more, but I'm going to let us hear from Lamis herself. So Lamis, we welcome you. And if you could please take a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manal, and everybody here today. And thank you especially to Anas and Malak and Shahid and our people in Palestine, who are not just fighting for the safety and the freedom of the Palestinian people, but who are in fact working to protect global morality and global law and order from the repression that we see being cemented in the Israeli government. It's appropriate that the Muslim community has gathered today on this boycott Biden Eid. There is no word that is more oft repeated in the Quran than the word zulm. And it is our duty, and this is the center of our morality, to stand and act against oppression. I want to speak to the Biden response a little bit and talk about the history of the US positioning for us to get a real understanding of what is happening now in this entrenchment of the US government in the past few decades, and to understand what I think are the effective strategies so that we can stop the failed strategies, the strategies that have failed people like Anas and people like Malak. We saw the Biden administration grasp and entrench what has been a radical position in the US for the past few decades. It wasn't always this radical position that the US government had. And it's important for us to understand what the US government position around Palestine and Israel was, even up until the 1960s. And there are two ways that we could understand the historic context and the radical shift towards violent, in support of violent supremacist violence by Israelis. Number one is that the US government was an active negotiator in collaboration with the International Red Cross to secure the release of Palestinians who were held as slaves and as forced labor by Zionists turned Israeli forces up until the 1950s, thousands of them across Palestine. The Red Cross called upon the US government to negotiate the release of the Palestinians who were enslaved by Zionists and Israelis. And the US did just that. Second, the US government was a member of the UN Conciliation Commission for Palestine, which was a commission that was established to secure the release of stolen Palestinian money, stolen by Israelis and Zionists, and to help secure the repatriation of Palestinian refugees. By the 1960s, the US government had avowed this commission and refused to recognize Palestinian refugees, even though this, of course, is recorded constantly by UN and by UNRWA. And it's important to understand that what we see now is not a normal. It is a radical shift, which we must shift back to a semblance of morality, legality, and normalcy. Every time that the Biden administration or the Clinton administration or the Obama administration stated and repeated that Israel has the right to self-defense, what they are stating is a radical criminal, actually, with liability, encouragement, even I would go far as to say incitement of Israeli war crimes and crimes against humanity. There is no right under any law or principle for any state or entity to be protected in defending apartheid. There is no right to defend settler colonialism. There is no right to defend administrative detention. This is a war crime. There is no right to defend a siege, which is also a war crime. There is no right to abduct children, to kidnap children 1 every 3 hours and to torture them. This is a war crime. There is no right for apartheid. It is a crime against humanity. And the Orwellian invocation by the Biden administration of self-defense is itself a liability and an advancement of those war crimes. This is double liability in the context that the Biden administration, like all administrations, but most notably Democratic administrations, that they advance and encourage and protect Israeli violence in violation of US laws and US adopted resolutions, but that they do so while criminalizing the victims and criminalizing Palestinians and more broadly, Muslims and Arabs who are seeking to stand not just with morality, but to stand and do the lawful thing to do. So when we saw this, Anna said this perfectly, and I've said this for quite some time, that the Palestinians have been so peaceful that any further peace is in fact a mass suicide. Worse over, the New York Times, which coordinates with the Department of Defense, which of course coordinates with all media, but with the Biden administration and the Department of Justice, hosted an op-ed, the New York Times hosted an op-ed by an Israeli official or former official, writing specifically that Palestinians just need to commit mass cultural suicide. The US Palestinians, we have Palestinians in the US We have Muslims in the US. We have Arabs in the US lingering in the worst prisons across the country for sending charity, for sending food, for sending money to children who were made orphans by the unlawful Israeli violence, Israeli racially supremacist violence. Meanwhile, what we're seeing and what we've been seeing for decades is the same White House that is sending our elders who are fighting oppression, who are doing the lawful thing by manipulation of language and law and logic, not by real law and morality, but by manipulation of language and logic, sending these good people to prison. The same government is hosting the same people that we are watching on TV with American accents, with US citizenship, who are openly engaging, documented evidence, by the way. So let's put a pin on that and what that means for the liability for those US citizens partaking in war crimes and crimes against humanity in Palestine. We make this note to them as well. But the US administration, DOJ, White House, otherwise executive, are hosting criminals who are not only criminal by virtue of international law. These are paid people who are involved in violations of federal state law. Armed home invasions are crimes under US and New York and DC and California statutes. And this too, like I said, is a liability. And the US knows this, the US government has known this, every administration has known this. In fact, the admission of knowledge is in this Orwellian language, but is also recorded in the fact that the US government only gave a waiver for the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO office, to exist in DC on the condition that they do not file any complaints before the ICC. I mean, what bigger admission of criminality can one get? And at this point, I'd like to actually talk a little bit about who has the right to self-defense. And this is according to the Geneva Conventions. This is according to US resolutions that the US itself has adopted and applied to Americans and the US government as well, but also repeated and reaffirmed by various UN resolutions. I won't waste time. There are plenty of people, and you can email me for citations on all of this. But it is the Palestinians who have the right to full self-defense, quoted by almost any means necessary within, of course, rational limitations. And we can talk about what rational limitations are available for people facing genocide and ethnic cleansing who are arrested internationally, protected by international law, should be enforceable by international law, and it is unlawful for this right to be obstructed by third-party states. And I want to segue into my final segment, if I may. And it's very important to me, Anas, and I hope that you're hearing, that you know that there are people who understand that not only have we failed, but that many of us have been reckless, in the least have been neglectful, in not advancing at this always, but especially at this period, real meaningful, successful strategies. And I want to say, Palestinians are not an abstraction. Palestinian rights are not an abstraction. And Palestinians are neither symbols nor steps for people's career ladders. And while I appreciate the importance of being diplomatic and friendly, and we operate the same way, we make friends with people we disagree with, but we do not compromise out of cowardice, and we do not render our people victim or weak or vulnerable to this Orwellian, illogical, failed tactic of working and operating within the US-Israeli narrative, which is admittedly criminal, unlawful, immoral. I highlight and reaffirm what Raja said. What we need now is to step forward into what many organizations have been saying for a while, which is there is only one way. There are countless resolutions and statements and institutions to solve the Palestinian problem. There isn't a single one that seeks to protect Palestinian lives. There isn't a single one that seeks to advance or implement the Palestinian right to remain in their homes or to return to their homes. If we are now to do as Anas and Malak and the rest of our people And as our own selves, we require as Palestinians, and even as Muslims who are vulnerable and are victims of Zionist efforts, who have led the anti-Muslim prosecution, criminalization, and hatred movement, we owe it to ourselves to act logically. I've said countless times, there is no case and there is no cause that is won by cowardice or compromise. The basics of negotiation that we are taught in life, even as children and in law, is that you don't ask for the bare minimum to reach what you want, you ask for the maximum. In the very least, we owe ourselves and our people this, to demand full sanctions, full embargo on Israel until 1, the dismantlement of all institutions of apartheid, 2, the dismantlement of all institutions of settler colonization, and 3, we must demand collectively the provision and safe passage to Palestinians for life-sustaining supplies and for self-defense, protected by law. Ba'ayyidkum, and I thank you very much for hosting this most appropriate. Stand and understand the power that Palestinians have given us, the safety Palestinians have given us at this moment, and reciprocate it. Wa ashkurkum. Assalamu alaikum.
Lamis, thank you so much for that powerful presentation, your words and your message. So thank you so much. We do have Dr. Omar Suleiman next, and we also have our poll questions. So please be patient with us, Dr. Suleiman. It's quick. If we can please have the results of question number 3, Dr. Bizian, and he explained to us why we need to do this. So we did, wow, we got 100%. And that was, do you support freedom of movement for Palestinians in Gaza, which includes airport, a seaport, and total opening of the borders? Excellent, everyone. And thank you so much. We have 517 that are part of this. Let's move to the next question, and then we'll hear, I'm sure, some words of wisdom from Dr. Omar.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone, and Eid Mubarak to you all. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you for the way that you work in your own capacity for the dignity of your brothers and sisters. My tone is going to be a little bit more somber because I just came back from a janazah, and so
Dr. Omar, sorry, I didn't even introduce you properly. If you would just let us do the question real quick, and then I'm going to reintroduce you or try to introduce you. My gosh, I know you don't need much of an introduction. Very quickly, please. This is our next poll question: is should U.S. Muslims put more emphasis on integration into American society ahead of moral and ethical stands on Palestine? So again, what we're saying, or what we're asking you, is should U.S. Muslims put more emphasis on integration into American society ahead of moral and ethical stands on Palestine? So an example would be, let's go to the Biden aid because that way we're integrating and we're, cooperating. Or do we take a principled stand? So that is what the question is asking. Do you strongly support that statement? Somewhat support, somewhat oppose, or strongly oppose? So please, if you take a moment to answer that, as well as the demographic data and that poll question, it's really important. There's value in what we're doing here with these poll questions. So please take a moment to answer that. And then what I wanted to say, because it wouldn't be fair, there are people that are icons for sure, and Dr. Suleiman is one of them. All you have to see is when he posts something, instantly you have people that are paying attention. So thank you so much for being a person of influence. Thank you for your leadership at a very young age, Dr. Suleiman. He is the founder of the Yaqeen Institute. I think many of you know so much about him, many awards. And so again, I have shortened everybody's introductions this evening, so I kick it back over to you, and I apologize for interrupting you. Thank you.
Oh no, please don't apologize. And I appreciate the brief bio even. And I just wanted to start off by saying that, again, my tone is, I don't have my protest voice right now. I have I have a different tone because I just left the janazah. But I'd like to connect that to the experience. And I think that there are so many more voices that are far more, that are more brilliant and that have more to offer on the political front, inshallah ta'ala, as to the next step forward. So I want to start by framing this from a spiritual perspective and connecting it to the immediate experience that I just had, inshallah ta'ala, but also sort of coming out the Ramadan experience and the Eid experience. And then I'll just share a few thoughts in a few minutes to just reiterate my support for this initiative, my support for taking a stance on Palestine that is uncompromising and unqualified, because often we find that others are unable to, if even, offer an expression of Palestinian or dignifying Palestinian lives in an unqualified manner. They always have to frame it in Israel's security. I think that with us, it's important for us to insist on unqualified affirmations of Palestinian humanity. And too often, it's as if we're asking for some sort of special treatment. We're not. We're asking for moral consistency, which American politicians seem to have very little of on a consistent basis across parties. Moral consistency, to say that you are opposed to apartheid, occupation, the murder of innocent children in particular. And I focus on the children in particular because how blind do you have to be to not be able to express condemnation of the casualty counts, of the amount of innocent civilians that have been killed, when 1/4 of them end up being children on a routine basis? How morally inconsistent and blind do you have to be? So I'm finding my protest voice, but I want to stick to the somber. I want to stick to the somber tone, inshallah ta'ala, on the janazah, because I think it's very much so related. I think, in fact, Imam Yasser Brajas just posted on this that we just completed a janazah under very heavy rains. In fact, under a tornado watch. And even in our calm situation, in a situation where, you know, you're able to still have the equipment that is necessary to bury your loved ones, we were still tripping over ourselves literally and trying to make sure we don't dump too much mud on top of the body, that there isn't too much water that's coming from under, and that we could have a dignified burial. And just seeing the difficulty of people even coming to terms with the way that that burial takes place. And we were both just reflecting on, you know, our brothers and sisters in Palestine right now that are having to, you know, work with all of this as it's unfolding at such a rapid pace, right? The airstrikes are not stopping. The trauma is not stopping. Though the casualty count says one thing, but that 2-month-old child that survives that massacre, is that child really going to live? Do we really not include that child in a casualty count because that child is still breathing? They still have to carry out their janazas, and their janazas are under airstrikes. There's a fear when you go out to janazas because Israel has shown that it is so arrogant and cruel and brutal that it will bomb janazas. And so we were just reflecting on that, subhanAllah, just all of the things that we don't even take into consideration when we are thinking about the brutality that our brothers and sisters are living under right now. And so I start with that, and the verse that was coming to my mind was actually one where Allah connects in Surah Al-Rum the victory of a people that had an improbable course ahead of them to people's inability to see the reality of life and death. Allah talks about the victory of the Romans over the Persians in that capacity. And Allah immediately says, وَعْدَ اللَّهِ لَا يُخْلِفُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ. Allah does not betray his promise. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But most people don't know any better. يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. They don't even know the world. They don't even understand the dunya. They know the exteriors. They can only operate with exterior. They can only operate with numbers and military might and the power of politicians. They can only crunch numbers. They can only think about benefits and consequences through a lens of a very exterior read of the world around them. And so how would they then be anything but heedless about the hereafter and about the reality of things? And I think that this is something that our Palestinian brothers and sisters have figured out a very long time ago. They do not cower in the face of this mighty military. They just don't. You saw them praying on the 27th night in Al-Aqsa with complete belief and firmness and steadfastness. And it's no wonder that the Prophet ﷺ praised these people and said, "La yadurruhum man khadalahum." They are not harmed by those that betray them. They are not harmed by those that betray them, because they're attached to something that is far greater than political opportunism and political cowardice. They're attached to things that are beyond numbers. They're attached to something that is greater than a military or the lack of a military. They have something that nourishes them that is greater. And what I would like to say is that we have to try to summon within ourselves that same courage. If they have that much courage, where they have bombs falling on them and they are facing a military that boasts about not worrying about consequences. You listen to Benjamin Netanyahu or as Joe Biden likes to fondly call his friend Bibi after he gets off a phone call with him, talk about how he's not worried about the international commissions. He's not worried about any type of condemnations. He's not worried about any sanctions because Israel knows that it can act with impunity. But Allah is not unaware of the oppressors. And the oppressed who are connected to Allah are not unaware of the nature of how little their oppressors actually are. And so when this is taking place, if those brothers and sisters can continue to live, can continue to thrive, can continue to beam with courage in the face of actual bombs dropping on them, then what about us? We have to make sure that we keep our inspiration, inshallah ta'ala, strong. And I know I have already gone way over time, so I'm going to stop, inshallah ta'ala, and just say, listen to all the brilliant speakers that are there. Commit ourselves, inshallah ta'ala, to be inspired and nourished by the courage that we're seeing from them. And that courage is from faith. We pray that our faith is strong and that our courage, which we get from them, is strong. And we pray that Allah allow us to act for them with courage, and that we don't cower ourselves, nor do we compromise ourselves because of political mobility or because of some sort of opportunities that we see here. We are not those people. We take inspiration from them. Anything that I was going to say other than that, I know that the other speakers will reiterate in a much more powerful fashion. So Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you all for letting me be a part of this, and Eid Mubarak to you once again. And may Allah allow your du'as and your efforts to be a part of the freeing of Palestine and the alleviation of hardship from our brothers and sisters. Allahumma ameen. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sheikh Omar Suleiman. Always inspirational and so much value in your comments. So we appreciate you being part of this. And we do have more poll questions and a few more speakers. So our panelists know we want to hear from all of you. And it's so wonderful because we have so many strong leaders in the community and we wanted to include them. I think this should have been a summit. We should have had a 4-hour summit so we could give everyone a chance to really share more. But I'm going to quickly move to Brother Nihad Awad from CARE. He's the Executive Director of CARE National, co-founder. He's also received many community awards, civil rights awards, national awards. So Nihad, a few minutes, please. So thank you for sharing.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. Thank you so much, Manal, and everyone who has spoken. I learned so much, and I'm going to stick around to hear more of you, especially the ones who are running for public office. Sister Tahani, Sam, I heard him, and I also appreciate Noreen, who helped AOC run and win. And many of you, I haven't seen your names or pictures here. Your advocacy is very, very important, and you have my personal support. And inshallah, we can talk offline to see how I can personally help you. I'll make 2.5 points very quickly. Number one, the issue that we are confronting today as Americans in not being able to switch the US position on the issue of Palestine is the false premise that has been leading this country under elected representatives. The false premise that Israel is acting in self-defense. Secondly, that Israel is a strategic ally. And if we do not succeed to unpack this falsehood, we will continue to be seen as aiding the victimizers, not the victims. That's the main challenge. Whether a politician is deceptively aiding the state of Israel in its apartheid regime against the Palestinians, or conveniently and willingly, just because of the money, power, and votes by the pro-Israel communities, whether Zionist or Christian evangelist or extremists. If we crack this obstacle, we will see a bigger and faster shift in projecting the reality of what's taking place on the ground. Israel is not acting in self-defense. Israel has been the aggressor for the past 73 years. I am a refugee. My family lost its home from Al-Lid, which is really the epicenter of the recent Intifada in 1948, where a Palestinian was shot dead by an Israeli settler in what they call Israel proper. My family lost everything and they ended up in a refugee camp in 1948. The aggression started then. The Zionist supremacy started then with the total support of Europe and the United States. So the United States has been complicit in this genocidal apartheid regime, and the US has to switch position. If we fail not to switch that mindset, then we will not be able to effectively help our Palestinian brothers and sisters. That's number one. Number two, they say that Israel is a strategic ally. What's the value that Israel is bringing to the United States? Nothing. Israel is a liability on the United States. Whenever Israel commits a crime, America gets blamed for it. What are we getting back from Israel? Nothing. Our moral standing is vanishing because of the state of Israel's behavior. Go through the list and show that Israel has been a liability on the US, not a strategic ally. Israel gets in trouble and gets America in trouble. The war in Iraq and on Iraq was because of the state of Israel, because Iraq did not have any weapons of mass destruction. This settler colonial project is really sponsored and supported by the United States, politically, militarily, financially. So we have to challenge our own government to right the wrong, the historic wrong. And the second point is your voice is very important as believers in universal and indivisible justice. Definitely, we will hold our community leaders not to enable this administration, even as we talk now, to give them a cover that they have good relations with the Muslim community. Had these leaders who are now with the administration, had they boycotted this event, then it will be a very clear message that this administration has no connection and no respect and support in the Muslim community, because we all decided that justice is indivisible. Justice in Palestine is no less than justice here at home. And we cannot have this selective morality. So the enablers are undermining the Palestinians who are being bombed now, who are suffering now. Our brothers and sisters who are working with the administration are enabling that. I respect them, but I totally disagree with them. Secondly, those who are normalizing working with the pro-Israel organizations to undermine and infiltrate and neutralize the Muslim community and its leadership, they should be called out. Thirdly, you cannot be progressive unless you are progressive on the issue of Palestine. And we will call you out. This is not an issue of convenience, it should be a matter of conviction. So show us your true conviction by taking a stance. Even if it's not popular, even if it will cost you, but you should be on the right side of history. And finally, I love protests. I'd like to go to the streets and shout, but that is not enough. And if you call me to go there, I will go there. But the more important thing is for members of Congress and elected representatives to hear from all of you. If you spend hours traveling, booking, making signs, and just screaming in front of buildings, and there are no media attention and no politicians there, your message is not effective. With all due respect, unless you contact your elected representatives, because the power is there in the decision-making process. The $3.8 billion are not sent by an average person. They are confirmed and approved by the Congress, which is also sent by the administration. So unless we dismantle this, we will not be able to help those men, women, and children who are being cut into pieces with American weapons and money and silence and complicity. You can undo this by calling. And yesterday, on Friday, I called all my local representatives here in Virginia. I called them and I thank those who took a moral stance and issued a statement. I thank them because they are being pressured by the other side. So my brothers and sisters, my friends, allies, the best you can help those who are being bombed in Gaza is meet and communicate with your elected representatives. Once you do that, you go to the protests. But if you do that to the protest and just vet and just, express your anger, you're not helping enough. You can be more effective. And that's why, inshallah, the tide is shifting, but we need to expedite it more because those people who are being killed now, we need to save them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Nihad. Appreciate your words. And what we have next is a poll question. So if Brother Dr. Bizian can bring up our next poll question. And for anyone that has joined us, we have 546 people. People are still joining us. Please know that it is very important that you participate. Here are the results from the previous question, which was, should U.S. Muslims put more emphasis on integration into American society ahead of moral and ethical stands on Palestine? And so what we found is 24% agree with that concept. 2% said somewhat support. We have 3% that support. And then the next thing we have is strongly opposed with 59%. So that was our highest. So strongly opposed, but almost 60% people oppose of that strategy or that method. So thank you for participating with that last question. Our next question, and coming up, and then we'll give you guys a few seconds to answer that as well. We try to keep that up for about 15 seconds or so. Okay. Should the Biden administration support the International Criminal Court decision to investigate war crimes in Palestine? So you see your 5 choices. And again, should the Biden administration support the International Criminal Court decision to investigate war crimes in Palestine? Please, for everyone, for all the attendees, please participate. And then we always have the demographic data question. So please, if you can take a moment to answer that question with the 5 different options there. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. And I'll tell you, we have some amazing speakers that are still have not presented. But please, I want to remind our speakers, a couple of minutes, please. Next, if we can please hear from Zaina Ashrawi Hutchinson. She is a Palestinian American rights activist and community organizer. She was elected as a Bernie Sanders 2020 delegate to the DNC. She perceives the connectiveness and forges linkages between causes advocating for equality, justice, and freedom. And she hosts webinars, she's written, she's debated, she speaks, she's organized, and really is all about helping those that are oppressed, excluded, or marginalized. Also important to know that she is and was a Jerusalem-born Palestinian. She was exiled from her home where her parents and family still live only because she came here to study as a Palestinian. So please, Zaina, if you can give us 2 to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Actually, before I start, I have to say our friend Malak here in Gaza, she just messaged me and she said the bombing is so loud and it's tremendous. And she asked if she can come back on and say a word so you all can feel and hear what's going on. So I would defer a little bit, my time to Malak. Malak, are you with us?
Well, I'm with you, and it's like a shower of bombings happening right now, and it feels that the airstrike is just above me, so I might have to leave you now.
Malak, please be safe. Don't take risks. If you have to leave, we understand.
Yeah. That's a touch of reality. And I'll tell you, we can't be working fast enough to really wake up, everyone, wake up the entire country and the international community. So Zaina, if you have a few comments you'd like to share.
You can carry on, but I'm just going to be like in the living room. Can I unmute myself? So Zaina can carry on.
Sure.
Please, Malak, you can interject into my conversation, into my presentation at any point.
All right. Well, I will let you speak. I'll just have to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Malak. I mean, I don't even know what to say. But I will start with this. فخري وسلامي لفلسطين وللفلسطينيين في الغربة وعلى التربة واللاجئين أجمعين. صامدين في القدس وفي غزة وبكل فلسطين. So while we are actively centering the Palestinian narrative here, please remember the US media and most mainstream media around the world don't center Palestinians. When they tell you it's been quiet until a few days ago, please remember that neither occupation, apartheid, nor ethnic cleansing ever take a break. So I invite you to watch and follow Palestinians on social media and to talk to your Palestinian friends. Ask them, center them, uplift them, but seek those Palestinian narratives and center them. And when you do, and when you hear bombing, like we're hearing right now from Malak and Gaza, think about the children, think about the men and women, think about the humanity that is subjected to this cruelty. And when you're watching these videos on your phones and on your, laptops, and you think, oh, it's loud, turn it up even more. And when you think you cannot stand the sound because it's too loud or because it's too painful, remember that Malak can't turn that off, that the Palestinians in Gaza can't turn that off. And when it becomes too painful for you and you realize that it's too painful for you, remember that you have to watch it again and again and again and again, and you still won't even get a fraction of what Malak and everybody in Gaza feels right now. Think of those parents, the kids of those parents, the parents of those kids in Gaza right now, who are holding them, but they themselves are terrified to be alive a second too long to watch their children splattered to pieces before they do, as the bombs shatter all sound. And if they live, they have to experience it again and again and again. They can't mute it. The Israelis are doing this knowing that the whole world is watching, but they don't care. I'm not appealing. I'm demanding that Israel be sanctioned, normalization be stopped, funding conditioned, and criminal investigations into people, entities, and international accomplices investigated by the ICC and any other form of accountability be undertaken, legally, politically, or otherwise. I also demand that bills here in the United States, like Senate Bill 1061, titled Israel Relations Normalization Act of 2021, currently being considered in Congress, be immediately tabled, thrown out. And I ask that every single endorser, including my representative who signed on to this, make a statement as to where they stand on unconditionally, knowingly, and willingly funding ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. American politicians have known about much that some of my friends are just learning about for decades, not just a day or two. Some of these politicians have even funded, defended, and even partaken personally in it. Like Biden, hold them accountable. In this latest presidential election, Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims and our allies were essentially told to vote for a self-ascribed Zionist who has refused to even acknowledge the existence of the occupation. Having been a delegate to the DNC, along with amazing group of Palestinian American delegates who spoke up and fought for our rights, we fought hard to get the word occupation, end the occupation, not even end the occupation, just to get the word occupation on the DNC platform and Biden's campaign. We were rejected. And then we were told that Biden himself interjected to get that word occupation off the document. Occupation, this is facts on the ground. We asked for words like occupation, like equality, conditioning aid. None of it. All of it was refused. Our oppression transfers here too, in Palestine and here, and everywhere around the world. As Palestinian Americans, we are made to pay for our own ethnic cleansing, or we'd be held liable if we don't pay taxes. Our politicians pass bills, make ethnic cleansing not just legal, but they also fund it and reward it with economic and military and deals and oppressive regimes. Israel also is rewarded locally at the expense of the American people. For example, my state, Virginia, has an advisory board that does just that. It brings Israeli companies to profit from local resources. It has an office in the government building, staff, and acts as a lobbying arm for Israel. The amount of money that VIAB gets is massive compared to the necessary local investments in healthcare, education, civil rights, among many, many other underfunded necessities. But if I don't pay for my ethnic cleansing, I am legally liable if I don't pay for VIAB to exist. If you still think that Israel-Palestine is foreign policy, and if you don't have to worry, if you think you don't have to worry about it because it doesn't affect you, because this is Virginia, think again, because that bill I mentioned earlier, S1061, the normalization bill, they specifically talk about education and core curriculum to target for accuracy as it relates to Israel. They are using the methods that have been used against our African-American family for generations to delegitimize and erase our narrative and experience to further justify our oppression. Teach our kids at school.
Zina, thank you so much. Yeah.
Manal, excuse me, I just want to finish this. I'm almost done. I'm sorry. The pain, the trauma, and the absolute brutal cruelty don't have borders. I can talk about all of this. All of us exiled from our homeland and the inhumanity in which refugees have to wait to return home. People still have keys to their front doors from when their homes were wiped out or they were forcibly kicked out of them, just like it's happening in Sheikh Jarrah right now. And has continued to happen. I can talk about our Nakba, our catastrophe, but I won't know when to stop. So I won't stop. We won't stop. So after you watch those small clips with the volume up and you feel that pain, hit play again, watch it again and again and again, and then go and call your representatives and hold them accountable. Every single person running for office needs to be held accountable, and every single person running for office and in office needs to be held accountable. And all those who sign on to bills that legitimize our demise also need to be called out, and they need to answer to where they stand on this. Lastly, free Palestine, and I stand with all of you in solidarity always.
Thank you, Zina. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And really, everyone deserves way more time because you have important things to say. And I hope you'll write this. We need to keep educating, the broader community, even within our own community. So thank you for that. And Dr. Bazian did put a request. Please take the poll seriously. This is just a simple ask. And this is where we need to work together to make change happen. So we're going to go ahead. We have a short message from Angela Davis, who is a professor emeritus UC Santa Cruz. She is also part of it, or her specialty was history of consciousness. She's also an American political activist. So if we can please hear from Angela Davis.
Please stop and do it again because we can't hear her.
Yes.
Dr. Hatton, I think if you need to unmute yourself.
Now.
I join the many individuals and organizations around the world in expressing grief and anger and protest in light of the acceleration of violence by the Israeli government and the settlers they protect in Sheikh Jarrah. We protest the storming of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the extensive and brutal bombing of Gaza. And we call attention to and protest the Biden-Harris administration's collusion with the Israeli government, even as the Biden government participated in the celebration of Eid. And at a time when Palestinians the world over have been commemorating the Nakba. People all over the US and indeed throughout the world expressed their outrage when George Floyd's and Breonna Taylor's lives were extinguished by racist police violence. We know that shortly after these murders occurred, Ahmad Erekat was shot down on his sister's wedding day at a checkpoint between Bethlehem and Abu Dis outside of occupied East Jerusalem. This was clearly a state-sanctioned execution that we now recognize as a harbinger of the current violent assaults on Palestinians in East Jerusalem and Gaza, where over 100 people, including children, have already been killed. This is unconscionable. In 2011, I had the opportunity to visit Sheikh Jarrah with a delegation of indigenous and women of color activists, scholars, and artists. We talked with a Palestinian family who had been evicted from their home where they had lived for many decades. Jewish settlers had moved into the main rooms of their house, and they, the rightful owners, were relegated to a small area in the back of the house. Progressive Jews were conducting demonstrations every week to protest the eviction of Palestinians from their homes. What we witnessed 10 years ago is now happening on a much larger and more threatening scale. We should now understand that as these evictions continue, they prove that Israeli settler colonialism will only be halted when people all over the world demand that the rights of the Palestinian people in occupied Palestine be respected. Here in the US, we must make our demands for justice in Palestine resonate as powerfully as our demands for an end to racist police violence. Stop the evictions, stop the demolitions, stop the bombing, and end the occupation. Justice for Palestine.
Thank you so much, Angela. Even though she's not physically here, thank you for that message. We do have a next poll question, and we still have 5 speakers, amazing speakers, icons in our community. So you want to stick around and keep listening. We also have more people than we've had now coming on. So if we can please go ahead and give the results of the last poll, and then we'll go to the next one. So this was, should the Biden administration support the International Criminal Court decision to investigate war crimes in Palestine? So somewhat support was 1%, neutral 1%, opposed 1%, strongly opposed 0%. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I misread it. I'm glad, I'm confused here. Okay, strongly support was 98%, very good. Okay, so the results, again, let me correct myself, strongly support 98%. And our next question, please. Thank you all for being a part of it. This is how you get real data. And so we don't want to make up numbers. We want to be able to say that we actually took an actual survey, polled the Muslim community and the allies, and these are the results. So here's our next question. Muslim individuals and groups who engage in AJC, ADL, JCRC, and other Zionist organizations are strongly assist in normalizing Israeli apartheid, somewhat assist in normalizing Israeli apartheid, neutral, somewhat assist in undoing Israeli apartheid, strongly assist in undoing Israeli apartheid. So again, what you're looking at is answering that question, and that Muslim individuals and groups that engage with the AJC, the ADL, the JCRC, and other Zionist organizations are. And we'll give you guys a few seconds. Please participate. This is private. It's not connected to anyone. So don't feel like you're putting your information out there. So it's completely private. So thank you for that. And we're going to move on to our next speaker. And this is Zahra Bello. And she is a civil rights attorney. She is the ED, the executive director of one of the largest chapters in CARE, and that is the San Francisco Bay Area. So please give a warm welcome to Zahra Bello. And Zahra, please help us condense so that we can hear from the other speakers. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Assalamu alaikum, Manal, everyone at American Muslims for Palestine, the Shura Council in New York, and everyone else that's worked so hard to bring this event together. I sit here and I speak to you as someone who is an ally, someone who has been watching and observing and crying and protesting and writing, as someone who is complicit. Every day that I read news about what is happening in Palestine, every day that a family member or a friend says this happened, or I'm waiting on hearing to see if someone is alive and well, I am reminded of the reality that as Americans, we are paying for this. Every time a Palestinian dies, it is because we as Americans chose our freedom, chose our liberty, chose our ability to move, and paid our taxes. Everything that is happening there, we make possible through our hard-earned money. Someone posted today, they said, every time you go to work, know that a portion of the money that you will earn today is paying for the oppression that breaks our hearts. And so today I'm here as your sister to say, belated Eid Mubarak. While we celebrate the end of Ramadan, we also celebrate resistance. That God is great, God is just, and God is merciful. That is my God. That is the God of the Palestinians, because you know what? The Palestinians don't need us. We do this work because it is our salvation. We speak out in solidarity because we are complicit. And frankly, we need to do more. We can't just speak out about Palestine once in a while. We can't just speak out about Palestine when there's some additional news coverage, because as previous speakers have said, it hasn't been years of quiet. It has been 73 years of occupation, of the ongoing theft of land, of the ongoing theft of water, of the ongoing killing of innocent men, women, and children. And yet we sit back as our government blames the victims for resisting. We cheer on that resistance. We celebrate it from afar, and we need to keep on doing what we're doing. And so my plea to all of you, particularly those of you who are not Palestinian and are called in as allies today, we need to ensure that our activism doesn't end today. It goes on to tomorrow and the next day and the next day. You need to fund the groups that are doing this work. You need to hold your local elected officials accountable, call them, visit them at their offices in person. You need to protest, and you need to keep talking to people. Every day, Palestinians remind us that they are not afraid, that they are strong, that they are courageous, and they will keep fighting. And so we must learn from them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next, I'm going to move directly. Thank you for your concise message and really very powerful message. I love that. Next, we have this young lady. Anyone recognize this? We did not come here to be bystanders, and that is the message. So Linda is an activist. She's well known. She's national. She's really taken a beating. You know, God bless her. To talk about courage. So Linda, if you could please also, I know because we're running short on time, just a couple of minutes, please. We'd really appreciate hearing from you. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Manal. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I don't really have much more to add. I was sitting here intently listening to Anas and to Malak and to Shahid and to our sisters and brothers who are in Palestine. I'm just here really to implore our Muslim American communities, our Muslim American leaders, and in particular those who are not Palestinians, to follow the lead of the Palestinian leaders in our community, of our Palestinian American activists. I am right now thinking about just mothers who woke up in the morning without their entire families, women who lost 4 children all at once, and people who've lost their entire livelihoods. You know, the Muslim American community has watched me and many other activists literally be almost destroyed at the hands of opposition in the United States of America. And what we embody as Palestinian American activists is that we stayed the course, and we were courageous, and we were brave with very little resources. Our opposition is well funded, they are well resourced, they are well organized, they are well coordinated. And what I always tell our people is that our opposition is not smarter than us. They don't love their people more than we love our people. There is no reason why our opposition has more resources and is more coordinated and more organized than we are. If they could be united around occupation and around hatred and bigotry, then we could be united around solidarity and love and compassion and justice for the Palestinian people. So I'm calling on our Muslim community. It is not my style. It's not how I engaged, but I'm getting to the point in my life where we're going to have to call people one by one, and they have to be called out. We have to call on our community to center morality, to center justice in the way in which we organize in our communities. If you are a Muslim organization that is normalizing relationships with organizations who unapologetically are unequivocally in support of the state of Israel, you are not my brother and sister in Islam. I do not want to organize with you. I do not want to speak at your conventions. I don't want to show up to your meetings. And in fact, this administration knows, and they know, that you are not, in fact, speaking on behalf of our communities. And what I will say to our young activists across the country, what will save us and save the Palestinian is the understanding that our liberation as Palestinians is bound up with the liberation of other marginalized people around the world. The people that are going to come to us are going to be our Black Lives Matter movements, Black leaders across the country. It's going to be Christian pastors who are coming and standing in solidarity and divesting from the state of Israel. It is young progressive Jews who are going up against powerful institutions in their community to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. So yes, our Palestinian people are suffering, but so are other people. And our struggle as Palestinian is intertwined with the struggles of others, which is why you see young Palestinian Americans and others who are at the forefront of racial justice movements in America, because we know the pain of discrimination. We know the pain of police brutality. We understand what oppression is. So I just come here to say that I am brokenhearted, that we as Palestinians are exhausted. We are tired of defending our humanity. We are tired of trying to push what we believe to be a narrative of justice and equality. We should not have to explain why we are complicit in the murder, in the desecration, in the dehumanization of the Palestinian people. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. If you are a progressive and you claim that you would have stood up against South African apartheid, well, I invite you now in 2021 to stand up against the apartheid state of Israel. This is the global justice movement of our generation. And I promise you this, and this is what I always think about, Minal. I always think ahead. I think about 30, 40 years from now. May Allah give me enough life to be on this earth for that long. And I want to be able to say 30 and 40 years from now that I was on the right side of history on every issue. Of course, as a Palestinian, obviously, it's clear where I am on the Palestinian issue. But if you are not Palestinian, I guarantee you that your great-grandchildren are going to ask you, where were you on the issue of Palestine? What did you say against the apartheid state of Israel? How did you hold our leaders accountable? And I will say this for folks who talked about elections, and I'll wrap up with this point, Minat. I tried to be a strategic organizer, and I'm not perfect. And it was very important to me as an organizer to join with allies to remove a fascist administration like the Trump administration. But I also understood that Joe Biden was not a champion for Palestinians. I never told anybody that Biden and Kamala Harris, who have a track record of being pro-Israel, were going to save our community. The strategy is a long-term one, and this is what I implore Palestinians to understand. This is not about tomorrow or the week after or the next month after. If you want to see a liberated Palestine, you got to wake up and organize every single day. Biden is a holding place for us for the next 4 years. And I promise you, I will not come back in 4 years and ask you to vote for the lesser of two evils. In 2020, we were voting fascist against someone who wasn't as fascist. And that was the choice that we had. But we have to build political power. All politics is local. We have the money. Support Palestinian American candidates. Support Muslim candidates who align with our values and principles. Support progressives. Do not wake up in the morning and complain to me about someone who is unequivocally standing with the state of Israel when you have not put your money on a candidate that actually stands with our communities. So you got to do the work. And so I know the people that are on this call are the people doing the work. Put your money on the people that are doing the work. You don't have to be the one on the front lines. We're not asking you to risk your careers. We're telling you that some of us are willing to do that. I'm willing to live in the street if I have to, in order to stand up unequivocally for not only my people, but for all marginalized people. So be courageous. May Allah instill in all of us the moral courage for us to stand up for justice, even when it's hard. Because if it wasn't hard, Manal, everybody would be doing it. So the understanding that this is going to be hard work, that some of us may have to shed some blood, some of us may have to ruin our careers, some of us may have to be unemployed. Bad things happen to people who stand up for justice, and that is the history of the world. So I am grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to the consistency and our strategic organizing and coordination with other marginalized movements and moving our work forward for justice for Palestinians, but justice for all people all around the world.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for that great message. And next, we do have a poll question by Dr. Hatem. If we can please share the results. If you're new to the group, and please you take this seriously. This is just a simple ask. It makes a difference for us. So let's look at the results from the last question. We just have a couple more, and then Tihani, we'll be hearing from you next. So the results here, 70% said strongly agree to or strongly assist in normalizing Israeli apartheid. So again, let me repeat the question. Muslim individuals and groups who engage in AJC, ADL, JCRC, and other Zionist organizations are, and we had 70% of you tell us that you strongly, that it does assist in normalizing this. Team came in with somewhat assist in normalizing Israeli apartheid, 8% neutral, 3% somewhat, and then 6% said strongly assist in undoing Israeli apartheid. So thank you for that. And the next question, please, Dr. Bizian. Thank you guys for working with us and helping us collect this information. The Biden administration and the State Department should enforce the 4th Geneva Convention and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So do you strongly support that? Somewhat support, neutral, somewhat oppose, strongly oppose? And while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead while you guys are answering. I'm going to at least do the intro for Tihani, and then we'll give her the floor. We're so I'm happy that you're here with us, Tihani, this evening. Tihani Abushi is a civil rights attorney in New York City for the last decade, and she is currently the progressive front runner for Manhattan's district attorney. She was born and raised in New York City. Tihani has spent her career fighting against discrimination, racism, and to bring systemic change to our criminal justice system. There's a lot more I can say about her, but I'm going to let her tell us a little bit about just what her message is this evening. So Tihani.
Thank you so much, Manaz. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. It's been humbling to sit here for the last 2 hours and hear just these amazing opinions, and it really just stopped time for me when I heard the explosions on the other end of where Malak Matar is sitting. I mean, to watch the videos through our phones is one thing, but to hear it live on a Zoom call, it just really hits home what's at stake for us. You know, as a civil rights attorney, I have spent my career fighting discrimination, racism, police violence, protecting victims, fighting for the underdog. And here, when it comes time to Palestinian rights, we're told to be afraid to do that. We're told to think twice about what our future might look like when we stand up for Palestinian rights. I mean, this entire week, we're watching entire families slaughtered. You're watching parents who was spending the last week of Ramadan buying gifts for their children, getting them new clothes, kids who were looking forward to not having to fast again after that 30th day. And they woke up to funerals. They woke up to their homes in rubble. We saw families digging their newborns out of rubble. I mean, we're supposed to be afraid to say something about this. We are the moral compass of the world. We are the democratic lighthouse of the world, and we're seeing families slaughtered and torn apart, and we're told to think twice about opening our mouth. It's been incredibly difficult for me on this end of the war to hear these things. I can't imagine what our brothers and sisters in Palestine are experiencing right now, but I know that our duty in this moment is to be unequivocal and unapologetic in our demands for justice. to end this discrimination, to ensure that all people, especially the Palestinian people, have a right to not only exist and survive, but thrive, to move freely about their own country, to have their history and identity preserved, to ensure that their children grow up and continue to grow up proud of who they are. And this is where us as Americans and across the country should reiterate our support for these universal concepts of humanity and justice and morality, and not make exceptions depending on how big, powerful, or wealthy the nations or the oppressors are who are engaging in this conduct. And so I know we're supposed to keep it short. All I want to say is we must stand together. We must not only support candidates who are running for office and change this idea of Palestinians being powerless, but being people who are part of the fabric of our societies. We are here, we raise our children here, we pay our taxes, we fight for justice on behalf of all communities, and we are no exception to this. So we should be angry, but also translate that into action, and most importantly, don't water down the message. Don't water down the message. Our brothers and sisters are relying on us to push this as far as we possibly can. And I will do my best to push it as far as we can and work with everybody. And so thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to listen, to learn, to feel this on a much different level than just watching it on TV and social media, and have this space to talk about what the next steps are, not only for our community, but for the world as it relates to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tihani. Thank you for being in time, and best wishes to you, and you're amazing. And I'll tell you, every one of our speakers are eloquent. So if you don't believe you're a great public speaker, work on it, because it's a skill that can be learned and it makes a difference. So thank you for that. Next, we have Dr. Hatem Bizian, who's going to speak, but would you have a poll question or poll results for us before you speak? And we have two additional.
Yeah, we'll have, let's continue with this because we still had 77%. I think we need to get this finalized. Maybe next week we could have it.
Okay, so you're on. Thank you so much, Dr. Bizian, and for helping organize this and for all the work and all the projects that you're a part of and that you've started, all of the organizations. So thank you.
Thank you. Jazakumullah khair for everyone. And really, it's a pleasure to be with all of you at such a both one has to have the joy for ending Ramadan, but with the joy you have two tears for all our brothers and sisters that are just living under the most intense bombardment as we speak. As we're looking at the photos and the pictures that are coming with buildings, 80 families becoming homeless in less than a minute, this is what we are facing. So really what I wanted to do is few things. One, I put the White House phone number in there. So if anyone that is with us, really call the White House, 202, I think this is 202-456-1111. Then again, 202-456-1111, and express your view on the development that are taking place in Palestine, for the United States to stop sending foreign aid to Israel. And you could also get them any of the sense of the polls that we have done. It's just you need to express ourselves. The second, again, as Linda have called on us, we really need the resources for AMP. AMP did create a C4 as well as our regular nonprofit. We're on it for the long term. So it's not a day, it's not a two, it's a long term. We say that, working for Palestine and being engaged politically, it's a boxing match. You have to be in the ring 24/7. You can't take vacation, even though the New York Times says that violence returned to the Holy Land. And I was wondering, maybe the violence was actually with Ted Cruz in Cancun for vacation and just came back yesterday or a few days ago. So we need to actually change and alter the perspective and what is being done in here. The third thing that I want to actually highlight that, and I think also Rajab from New York Shura Council, the Northern California Islamic Council have adopted the PDS principles. I would call on all our member organizations in Northern California Islamic Council to adopt the PDS. So we're no longer saying somebody's decided, well, support you right for the PDS, but I can do it because I still would like to get my, taste of Zionism on the side. So those days are over. So both the Northern California Islamic Council and the New York Shura Council are committed to embracing the PDS. So we call on all Muslim organizations, all Arab organizations, or our allies to adopt the PDS. And in the same way, during the South African period, we used to check with the ANC. If you don't know, you call a Palestinian that is connected to the PDS. So don't go down around the corner to a store and say, well, I talked to him and he said, no, he doesn't know. You call organizations, whether AMP or others, that are connected to the PDS movement. The third is that we're putting together, it's going to be out this coming week, Palestine Statement of Principles for American Muslim Leaders and Communities. And this will say that we commit to the centering of Palestinian voices, narratives, and history in all engagements and relations about Palestine. The days where our local Zionists get a veto power of who can actually speak in our own space is gone, right? So we need to make sure that this is the case. We commit ourselves to de-Zionization of Muslim spaces, events, conferences, funding sources, cultural production, which mean that the time, resources, and efforts are directed to the marginalized and colonized rather than supporting metaphorical occupation in our institutional spaces. We commit to approaching Palestine, the land, the people through Palestinian lens, experiencing a Zionist settler colonial apartheid project, which was incubated, nurtured by Western colonization, protected by it, with its Arab and Muslim allies in the region. So again, we critique both. We affirm Islamic law prohibition on visiting the occupied Palestine at the invitation, facility, and funding of the settler colonial apartheid occupying power or its representative organization and groups abroad or through university and not-for-profit front groups working toward this end. If you want a picture of Al-Aqsa Mosque, get one from the internet. You don't need to go through the Hasbara Network, MLI Project, JCRC, Interfaith. You don't have a right to go to Al-Aqsa, where Palestinians who could see Al-Aqsa in the West Bank can go. And especially if you have Palestinian homes, Sheikh Jarrah, Wadi al-Joz, Bustan, and a whole bunch of other areas around Jerusalem that are being taken over, and you're bouncing around taking selfies, right, with all bunch of people in there that are facilitating those. Those days are over, that you need to commit yourself to that. And it is, again, I translated all the fatwas, all of the legal opinions in Islamic law. The only time that Islamic law permits you to visit an occupied land is upon the invitation of a people and in solidarity with the people occupied. So the fact that you're going with a Hasbara, MLI, AJC, JCRC, ADL, or anyone, that you're violating Islamic law by the consensus of scholarship on that subject, right? So again, this is very important in relations. We pledge to fight racism, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism without committing the blunder that links these efforts towards normalization of settler colonialism. So we do have our Jewish allies that have been in the forefront with us, and we have a collective effort to challenge settler colonialism. So don't say that you want to go to Palestine to understand Judaism. I have enough Jewish friends and colleagues, scholars, that will engage with you about the history of Judaism, the history of their resistance, the history of their relations with the Muslim world, the history of their engagement in Spain, the history of their engagement in Tunisia, the history of their engagement in Yemen, in Iraq, and other places, without having to go and visit Netanyahu or Rabin to think that you're actually, not Rabin, but Rabin Memorial or any of the Zionists. So those, again, those are to be completely delinked. We renounce the use of interfaith dialogue or faith washing and engagement as a Trojan horse to normalize Zionism and Israel, while building relations with Zionist organizations like ADL, JCRC, AJC, Zionist Organization of America, and others at the expense of centering Palestine and Palestinians. We affirm our collective commitment to uplift the cause of Palestine and its people and view justice as indivisible whole. Our freedom, dignity, and equality are incomplete if the Palestinians are denied them daily. So this is unnegotiable. We proclaim support for the Palestinian civil rights-led civil society-led call for boycott, divestment, and sanction, which at present is the measure of local, regional, and global solidarity with the colonized population. We acknowledge the basic fact that Palestinian Authority, Arab, and Muslim leaders have all undermined Palestinian rights for immediate and narrowly desired economic and political benefits. Thus, agreement or relation by one country or another with Israel is not the criterion by which solidarity with the Palestinian is measured. The history of Palestine and settler colonialism is saturated with evidence of betrayal, double-crossing, and undermining the rights of the people for minor gains. So again, the fact that United Arab Emirates or Jordan, Egypt, or any of those political leadership have normalized does not mean that we jump and at least celebrate that. We commit ourselves to rebuff all economic, financial, technological, medical, legal, and training normalization program intended to posit Israeli settler colonialism as a model and a hub for success and innovation. So we have many of these efforts that are directed at the Arab and Muslim population. So these will be 10 points of principles that will be distributed, and we ask people to sign on them as commitment to adhere to how we engage with Palestine in the United States. So that's all. So this is our task, and this is the work that we need to support Palestine, call the White House. And also I have the phone number for the Congress switchboard, 202-224-3121. Let me repeat, 202-224-3121. I encourage people every morning, you know, I get my coffee, get your coffee and just make 2 phone calls, right? Again, if they don't like you, recommend a therapist for them. I'm not in the business of what you call being a therapist for those who want to maintain settler colonialism. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bazian. That was our academic context, and also just save the numbers in your phone. So I just already saved the first one. I'm going to save the second one. Makes it easy for you. So just save it in your phone. Okay, we only have 2 speakers, a couple of poll questions. Thank you all for being here with us. This is important. We are gathered together. I would love to see, okay, here's the results of the last question about the Biden administration and the State Department should enforce the 4th Geneva Convention and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on Palestine. Great job, 99% strongly support. We had 1% that somewhat support. And then we did have 1% that said they strongly oppose. Okay, let's go to the next question, Dr. Bazian. And then we will bring our next speaker. And that is American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, and other major Zionist lobby groups' role in the US political system. Did they strongly impact in a negative way US policy on Palestine? Somewhat impact in negative way the US policy on Palestine? Neutral on the impact? Somewhat impact in a positive way US policy on Palestine? Strongly impact in a positive way US policy on Palestine? Okay, so do we have strongly impact in a positive way? Was that supposed to, is that repetitive? Did I miss something here? Okay, so if we can
somewhat
please.
And strongly.
Oh, somewhat, sorry, somewhat impact and strongly impact. Okay, thank you.
Get the ratio 5.
Yes, yes. So please, again, for all of you that are with us, take a second and just select what you truly believe is what you believe to be correct. So let us go now. The poll is open. Please participate. Just take a moment. If you have to reread it, it's available for you there at the bottom. And I'd like to bring up our last couple of speakers. First, we have Muhammad Abu Ghazali, and he is with the Palestinian Youth Movement. So Muhammad, tfaddal.
Thank you, Manal. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's been a great discussion that I got to witness everyone and their testimonies and their perspectives, and I'll try my best to keep this as short as possible. Like Manal said, I'm with the Palestine Youth Movement, and for those that don't already know, it's a space that gives Palestinian youth throughout North America the chance to learn the history of our struggle, to prepare for the future of our struggle, and just is a space to make life in exile a little bit less lonely and unbearable as a Palestinian. It's an honor to join my family in resistance here today, and Eid Mubarak to all who are celebrating. I know that celebrating Eid this year felt a little bit different, to say the least, from our usual celebrations, as our hearts shatter for Palestine. But above all, we celebrate knowing that every single person around the world who continues to fight for our liberation is doing the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and will be rewarded for their efforts with the Almighty. But what matters is not only that we celebrate Eid, but who we celebrate with, of course. And as we all know, there's nothing to celebrate with the Biden administration. There's a hadith by our beloved Prophet that I'm sure everyone is already aware of. Whosoever of you sees an evil action, let him change it with his hand. And if he's not able to do so, then with his tongue. And if he's not able to do so, then with his heart. And that is the weakest of faith. And I have no idea how anyone can accept these great teachings by the Prophet and yet decide to attend this insulting Eid dinner. I know that many in the Muslim community feel so disempowered that they may have already given up entirely on their own sense of dignity and instead choose to jump when told to jump and sit when told to sit. So disillusioned are they that they ignore the hadith by our Prophet where he tells us to plant the seed even if the day of judgment is tomorrow. Plant the seed even if you will never see the tree. Do your job, stand up for what is right, and leave the rest to Allah. Wattaqid. The beauty of all the protests we saw yesterday is the direct fruit of the seeds planted by those who came before us. Using Eid as an opportunity to whitewash the US's criminal support to our dispossession is nothing less than insulting and offensive. I feel insulted on behalf of all Muslims, and I'm embarrassed by those who shamelessly crossed the picket line and sat with those funding our exile, as I genuinely don't know how they will ever be able to look their communities in the eye again. On the Day of Judgment, Allah will ask them about this dinner they're attending. And know this and be sure of it. They'll have no choice but to say that they chose their lifestyles, their careers, their wealth, and their reputations over Palestine and over justice. I celebrate with you all here today, and you all because you have chosen the side of the oppressed. Thank you for making the right decision to be here today. Just as we are closer to liberation this Eid than last Eid, may we be closer to liberation next Eid as well. Eid Mubarak, and I look forward to sharing the fight with you all until liberation, inshallah.
Great. Thank you so much, Muhammad, and thank you again for being concise. I appreciate that, and great message also. Sometimes we can say a lot in a very short time. So let's move to, I guess, is our next poll question ready, or do we take Tahir first?
Yeah, but if we could get people just to really vote, so we could get all the data.
Okay, so Tahir, before you speak, if you can bring up the next one, we just have a couple more questions, and I think that's a good idea. That way we get the results. And so if you bring up the results of the last poll question, and then we'll finish up with the poll and wrap up everything. Thank you all for being patient and for being with us on the call. And inshallah, you're getting some good information.
Let's finish this one. So here's the result for this one.
Okay, excellent. So this was American Israeli Public Affairs Committee and other major Zionist lobby groups' role in the U.S. political system. They strongly impact in a negative way U.S. policy, 98%. Very good. So I think we can move on to the next one. And I do want to thank the organizing committee. They're here. So let me go through this poll question, make sure I thank everyone. Muslim American organizations should support the Palestinian-led and called for boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement and implement it in their regular plans. And I repeat, Muslim American organizations and our allies, I would say, should support the Palestinian-led call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement and implement it in their regular plans. If you could please take a moment and vote. Again, I remind everyone that this is private. So it's just, you and if you can please give us the results. And then Dr. Bazian, when you believe it's the right time to move to the next question, we can do that.
Maybe we could take one speaker and then we'll come because this still.
Okay, it takes a minute. Okay, let's go ahead with Tahir. Tahir Herzallah, and he is the Director of Outreach and Grassroots Organizing at American Muslims for Palestine. He's an amazing activist and he's been patient. And Tahir, concise, because we still have a poll question and I have a request from someone else. So go ahead, please.
Thank you, Manal, and thank you everyone for being on tonight. I want to personally thank the organizing committee for putting in such extraordinary effort in such a short period of time in response to this callous response from the Biden administration on, let's just put it plainly and frankly, a massacre of women, children, and men in the Gaza Strip. I woke up this morning with messages that my family's neighborhood in Gaza had been bombarded. And so based on previous experience, I immediately began to scour the internet, social media, Gaza Ministry of Health, to look at the names of those who were murdered, who were martyred in Gaza, just to see if my last name would pop up anywhere on the registry. And I want you to imagine that for a second, that this is the life that we're living. This is the situation that we're in, where we're trying to find out if our family members have been killed by looking at the registries of those who have been martyred, provided officially. And I found the list. Alhamdulillah, nobody from my family was martyred last night, but the bombing came so close that when I called them earlier today, they told me that the entire building shook, that all the solar panels and the water tanks on top of their house had been destroyed. And so they are left essentially without power and without water, and essentially cannot go out to get the necessary supplies that they need. This is the situation that they are living in. But then when I continued to look at the names of those who have been martyred today, I started reading the names, and I started reading Amin Muhammad al-Qawlak, Ayat Ibrahim al-Qawlak, Muhammad Aoun al-Qawlak, Tahir Shukri al-Qawlak, Ahmed Shukri al-Qawlak, Fawaz Shukri al-Qawlak, Riham Fawaz al-Qawlak, Samih Fawaz al-Qawlak, Abdul Hamid Fawaz al-Qawlak, Qusay Samih al-Qawlak. Yani, I started seeing that the entire Qawlak family, 17 members of one family, had been brutally slaughtered last night in the barbaric and vicious bombardment of the Al-Rimal neighborhood in central Gaza City last night. This barbarity is unmatched. This stuff makes Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun look like a saint in comparison in the historical context. We're talking about a genocidal regime here, ladies and gentlemen. We're not talking about a state that can be negotiated with. We're not talking about an entity where you can demand rights and get equal rights with. This is a settler colonial genocidal regime that the only way we can be free and the only way we can feel liberation and seek that liberation is by the complete dismantlement of it. And it is no wonder, my dear Muslims, it is no wonder that what happened in Syria happened. It is no wonder that what happened with the Uyghur Muslims in China happened. And it is no wonder that the massive genocide of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar happened when it happened, because we have been so silent on dealing with Zionism and dealing with the state of Israel as it is, that of course murder and atrocities will continue to happen. Of course, if in open sight, in plain view of the entire world, the Palestinian people of Gaza are screaming. On Zoom calls with us, they are showing us the reality. If despite that, we are not moved to not just political action, I'm talking about radical action. If we are not moved to radical action to change the condition, then what will prevent the massacre of Muslims from around the world happening again? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And this is my message to all of us today. My dear Muslims, it is not enough, as some have said earlier in the call, to have Muslims represented in Congress or Muslims represented in American politics. We have Hadi Amr in the White House right now. He's the one negotiating on behalf of the American administration. He's not negotiating anything. He's pleading with the Israelis. He's pleading with the Israelis to stop bombardment. No, Mr. Hadi Amr, you are representative of the United States of America. You demand from Israel to stop its bombing. You don't plead with the Israelis to cease fire. Are you kidding me? Is this the best we can do as a Palestinian people, to put people in high positions so that you can go plead with the Israelis on behalf of the empire? That is absolutely ridiculous. We must hold those inside the White House and outside the White House. We have Rimo Dudin, we have Majdi Bitar, we have all these names that everybody was proud of. You know what? When Biden took office, look where we are today. Gaza is getting incinerated. Gaza is getting decimated. Gaza is getting bombed to smithereens. And we are here sitting, applauding those who made it into high positions. Shame on you. Shame on all of us who thought that this is the direction that we should be taking as Muslims. Shame on all of us who put money and resources into making this happen. Because is this the ultimate goal? Is this the end result that we're looking for? No, it's not. Because the people in Gaza and the people in Palestine deserve more than this. The people in Gaza and the people in Palestine deserve us to take radical action. Deserve that we, as American taxpayers, as people who are complicit, as has been said time and time again here, yes, 3.8 billion a year, yes, $10 million a day, yes, but what are we doing? What are we doing radically different that will force the US government to ultimately change its course? That's the question that I pose to all of us. And that is why I am working with AMP. That is why, as an organization, American Muslims for Palestine seeks to take the power of the mobilization of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people over the past week in the United States, in all the different capitals of this country, in all the different major cities. Take the energy and power of this mobilization and transform it into the forceful endeavor of political change. This is what we are doing, and this is the objective of our organization. And that is why I ask you, I implore you to support the work of American Muslims for Palestine, an organization that doesn't only work for this cause when there is a crisis. We are open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Ask our staff, ask our executive director. Nobody can sleep if there's something that needs to be done, if there's work that needs to be done. ampalestine.org/light-the-lamps. I implore you to support the work of this organization. I implore you not to level with and compromise on something that is so fundamental to our values and something so fundamental to our aqidah, our creed as Muslims. I thank you for joining us tonight. And I want to end by saying that if the Palestinian people in Gaza who are speaking to me on Instagram Live and Facebook Live and on Zoom, who are under aerial bombardment as we speak, when I ask them, what do you tell us? What would you tell us? What do you recommend we do? I want you to imagine this for a second. I have never heard a single one of them say, send me money, send me food, send me aid. Never, never. But do you know what they say to me? They say, work to end this in America. We don't want to deal with this again. You have the power, the ability politically to change the situation. Look at their vision, because they know what the roots are. They know what the problem is. So we need to get with the program, dear Muslims, and stop giving ourselves excuses and start acting. Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you, Tahir. Very passionate request. And I want to make sure that we thank Kareem and we thank Arshi, and Zaina and Mir Abdul Wali. Let's see, Tasnuva. Some people even had to leave, Monita. So thank you all for all the organizing that you've done. We do have the president of the California Democratic Council who would like to give a comment. I'm just trying to figure out if we're able to give Iyad. Are you able to give Iyad access to be able to say a few words? Kareem or Dr. Hatem?
Dr. Hatem.
And we do have still 2 more poll questions. So if we could bring Iyad on.
Audience?
Yeah, if you could upgrade Iyad in the audience, he's an attendee.
Upgrade him from the audience, please. And then if you also, we still want to finish up with our last 2 questions. Thank you to all of you that are still with us. We're just about done. So please hang in there. You've invested the time. Let's finish this strong together. So let's see, either Iyad comes on or we do a question while we're waiting on Iyad.
We'll have to, I'm still trying to locate him.
Okay.
Okay, here it is. So,
okay, so Iyad, be ready if you can hear us. And please, just a nice, concise message.
I promoted him, so he's...
Okay, so Iyad, you're on?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, sisters and brothers. I'm going to make it very, very brief and very concise. Thank you very much for the organizer for bringing this together. My message is going to be unique. My message will be for our brothers and sisters who are generous donors to the political parties and to the candidates. Please, 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 please trust the organizers and trust the activists who are in the party, who are seeing these people in their real colors. So when we are putting ourselves, as Sister Linda said, we put ourselves on the line. These people, they know how far we go in terms of organizing within the party. They might come to you in one way or another to show you they are with our community, but the way they are functioning with other communities is completely different. Another thing, it's very important for us, yes, to call out, but also to thank all those people who are supporting us, especially these elected officials. And we have to remind ourselves all the time, just because one of us is defecting within the party that doesn't mean we don't call him out. We have to call out our own before we call out people who are from outside. So this is my plea to you. It's very concise for our sisters and brothers who are donors to the parties, donor to the candidates. Please, please, when we are sharing with you our experiences with these candidates, we'll be more than happy as well to provide you with more internal information. So this way you know where you are putting your money, because we don't want to undermine the work of our community just because these candidates, they come to us and they tell us what we want to hear. Thank you very much, and may God bless you. And remember, we are all in this together. We are all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Iyad. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bizian for the results of the last poll question. And let's finish up our last two questions. Muslim American organizations should support the Palestinian-led and call for boycott, divestment, and sanction movement and implement it in their regular plans. And we have 94% strongly support the BDS movement. We have 6% that support. So it's not a strong support, but they support. We have 1% neutral and 1% strongly oppose the BDS movement. Okay, and that was 2 people in the group that voted that way. Okay, next question, please, Dr. Bizian.
This is the one about the media, and I think everyone should be voting on this one.
Okay, please. So in regards to US and Western media coverage, it dominantly reflects the following perspective. Is it strongly pro-Israel, somewhat pro-Israel, neutral and balanced on both sides, somewhat pro-Palestinian, strongly pro-Palestinian? Quick question, easy question. So if you could please weigh in, we appreciate that. And would love to see everybody weigh in on this one. And then we'll move to our last poll question. We'll give that just a few seconds and we'll go to our last poll question. We appreciate the 452 people that are with us, 53. Okay, I think, is that our people, you have you can see if people have voted. So let us know when you're ready to move to the last poll question.
That is the last poll question.
Oh, that was the last one? Okay, yeah, excellent.
One US meeting, yes.
Okay, so we're waiting for the results of the last poll question. So while we're waiting on the results, I want to thank everyone that really stepped up quickly to put this together. And mashallah, I'm so proud of our community. And I love that we're connecting together more than ever and meeting each other and strengthening, the struggle and the work that we can do to help each other. So let's always, be focused and be courageous. I think when people talk about each year that they select a word and they keep that word in front of them, and that's what they focus on. So I think courage is an amazing word. And I love what the messages that came through so many of you, just because you're Palestinian and people try to equate you to less than, that you don't belong in this country. And I think the more, I heard one of you say that this is our country, this is our city, we belong here, we pay taxes, we're having our children here, we're creating our businesses here, we're innovating. So I think the more we can grasp that, it doesn't mean that we don't care. We have hybrid identities in many cases. So let's go ahead, and I would like to turn it over to the organizers who would like to thank everyone and say goodbye to all. Is that Dr. Bizian or is there someone else? Is that Tahir? Is that Tisnuva? Okay, Dr. Bizian.
I would like, well, let me just make sure that everybody is voting. I'm still missing 27% of you that have not voted, so I want you to vote. I said earlier, if I had the knafi with me, I would have sent you. It was again from Nablus, so make sure to vote. I think what we need is to go and empower ourselves with data. And I will make this as a data set and share it. So when you go and speak to your congressman, congresswoman, your mayor, city council, the Democratic Party, anyone, that you just say, here's what a 500 sample, some we had 535, 540. So that's a good sample with good work on the margin of error that gives us a sense of where the community is at. Because as many of you know, that we often had the case where people are speaking for us or on behalf of us without actually ever checking with us about us as a community. So those days, again, we need to set them aside and let the data work. So really, I would like to thank everyone that came and participated. This was an effort that brought many different groups and organizations But I also need to really thank the community across the United States. Various Shura councils endorsed, sent out their information, major organizations that also endorsed, and we have an extensive list. If I read the list of all the organizations that endorsed and put their name on it in Facebook, we need to also really thank them in our capacity on local level. But also it's important to notice who's missing and make sure also for those who participated in the White House Eid is actually the time for people to answer of, are you with the community and are you with justice? Are you with an ending to apartheid? Or you want to use the constructive engagement that Reagan forwarded during the apartheid, which came into an utter failure because you cannot constructively engage with apartheid. An apartheid state is an apartheid state. It's not to be engaged, it should be shunned, it's to be sanctioned, it's to continue the work in there. So we need to celebrate the fact that we're still resisting. This is the 73rd year of the Nakba, and the Nakba continues. But I will also say that the resistance continue. For all intents and purposes, the Palestinians should have been erased from the face of the contemporary political discourse, but actually every generation is stronger than the one before it. And we're saying that we are not moving, right? The statement that we saw in Jerusalem, in Sheikh Jarrah, lan narhal, we're not leaving. But more importantly, we are returning. So for those who work with Al-Awda, which is one of the organizations that we work with, that we are returning, if not today, tomorrow, the day after. And inshallah, we'll celebrate Eid at one point in the Al-Aqsa Mosque and celebrate with all those who came with us as allies. So I'm gonna end the last poll and thank everyone so we could get the result of it and share the result. So again, in regards to US and Western media coverage, it dominantly reflects the following perspective: strongly pro-Israel, somewhat pro-Israel, so we're talking about almost 98%, neutral and balanced, and only somewhat pro-Palestinian at 2%, and strongly pro-Palestinian at 2%. So we're dealing with a decisive reflection on the media and how it represents the Palestinians. So Jazakumullah khair for everyone that participated with us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, bless your family, grant you good health, and continue to strengthen you to speak truth to power. And this is the only way for us to change. You are following a prophetic path. Every prophet came to actually proclaim justice. And when you are leaning, sometimes you feel weak, but know that you are leaning on the all just God, Al-Adl. So even that you might see yourself to be alone, you are never alone when you are leaning on the all just, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the type of people that we are, and we're inspired by our people in Palestine. So thank you, everyone. And
Professor Hatem, could you also share the phone numbers one more time?
one more time, actually. Let's see. I completely.
I have them. Okay, I have them. The first number he gave for the White House, if you guys can hear me, is 202-456-1111. We could probably type it in for everyone to see. 202-456-1111. That's an easy one. Store it in your phone under White House. And the other one was the congressional switchboard. It is 202-224-3121. Again, 202-224-3121.
Yes. And we will post this on YouTube so people could share it. So we'll have all of this material is available, inshallah, and we'll see you on both in the streets and in the halls of political. And continue.
Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Eid in Palestine 2021. And then, salam.
Salam.
Huh? Yeah.